Welcome to Literary Journeys with River. Today we explore Season of Storms, a crucial prequel in the Witcher saga that takes place before the main storyline but leaves lasting consequences. Remember, this video is only a summary, not the full book, created to help you understand the plot, characters, and conflicts without reading the entire novel. If you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your interaction helps YouTube recommend the video and grow the channel. Let's get started. Chapter 1. Hidden in the underbrush, the Eiger, a predatory creature, accurately perceives ground vibrations as it prepares to strike. It lives to kill not out of survival instinct but sheer violent pleasure. It watches its prey, a family passing through the forest, and selects the weakest, a lagging child. As it leaps, a scream shatters the silence. Geralt, the Witcher, reacts instantly but falls into a trap. The real attack targets a man pushing a cart, who is mercilessly torn apart by the beast. Geralt manages to save the woman, though he realizes she, too, was a decoy. He faces the gray, swift monster in a brutal fight. Despite the lethal blows, he defeats it, severing its head. Later, in Ansegis, the Reeve thanks him, but Geralt, tormented, blames himself for having used innocent people as bait. Outside, a storm begins to gather. Interlude 1. The sorceress Lydanade, known as Coral, appears before King Belohun of Karak, adorned with ruby jewels to impress. Belohun, heir to a lineage of merchants and pirates, accuses her of distributing abortive elixirs to the kingdom's women, which he views as a threat to social order. Coral, poised and elegant, defends women's right to decide over their motherhood and asserts that her services are a legitimate source of income for her sisterhood. Tension rises as the king reveals his upcoming marriage to a 17-year-old girl and demands Coral not to provide her with potions. She agrees with an ironic smile. Coral then hints at fraud within the court, suggesting the king is being robbed. Enraged, Belohun demands names, but Coral only smiles. Meanwhile, Princes Egmund and Xander look on with disdain. Marine frescoes and a whimsical map decorate the royal hall walls. Chapter 2. Geralt arrives at the port city of Karak, passing through neighborhoods marked by inequality. From Palmyra's slums to the walled district of the wealthy, the contrast is stark. At the guard tower, he must surrender his swords, encountering vulgar and aggressive female guards. After this unpleasant experience, he visits the elegant Osteria Natura Rerum, where the owner, Phoebus Ravna, welcomes him warmly. Things seem to improve until he is arrested by 3 men in black just before tasting the turbot he ordered. In prison, his lawyer proves inept, urging him to plead guilty. At trial, Geralt defends himself with legal arguments, but the court accuses him of tax fraud. He refuses to confess, and despite the lack of evidence, a bail of 500 crowns is imposed. He finds himself in a precarious situation, surrounded by suspicion, prejudice, and an indifferent justice system. Chapter 3. Freed thanks to a mysterious bail payment, Geralt discovers his swords are missing. The court confiscated his bag containing the deposit receipt. When trying to retrieve them, guards accuse him of lying and attack. The brutal clash leaves several women injured, but Geralt is also battered. The elderly clerk, Gonshorek, suddenly dies. Ferent de Lettenhove, the court instigator, orders an investigation. Though a receipt is found under a false name, no one saw Geralt retrieve his weapons. Geralt invents a story claiming the swords cause magical impotence to scare the thief. Later, Dandelion, his old friend and Ferent's cousin, reveals that it was Lydanade Coral who denounced him and later paid his bail. Geralt suspects a deeper scheme. As they walk through Karak streets, 3 thugs ambush them. Unarmed, Geralt defeats them using a cooper's stake. The city turns into a nest of intrigue. Chapter 4. Freed, furious, and penniless, Geralt drinks brandy at the market before retrieving his mare, Roach. At the guard tower, he tries to reclaim his swords but is denied without the receipt. The clerk, Gonshorek, is dead, and the guards provoke him. Enraged, Geralt retaliates with violence, unleashing a fierce brawl, felling nearly all of them. Ferent de Lettenhove arrives just in time to stop the massacre. Despite the accusations, Ferent promises to investigate the theft. But the receipt found bears a false name, Geralt of Rivia. Geralt warns the swords are enchanted and may cause impotence, hoping the rumor reaches the thief. Dandelion confirms Coral both accused and bailed him out. Distrusting the law, Geralt decides to confront her. As he walks, he is ambushed by 3 thugs who knew he was unarmed. Using a stake, he defeats them. His fate becomes entwined with Coral's. Chapter 5. Geralt accepts Coral's invitation to her luxurious residence in Karak. The sorceress who had him arrested and then bailed him out greets him. From the start, their conversation is charged with hidden tension, sarcasm, and seductive games. Coral admits manipulating his legal situation as a control experiment, claiming it wasn't her personal decision but that of other sorcerers with unclear agendas. Though she hints at attraction to Geralt, her words are steeped in manipulation and power. They speak of Yennefer, of bets about their past relationship, and of rumors within the magical brotherhood. Geralt, uncomfortable, tries to maintain composure but feels provoked. Coral proposes he stay in the city under her protection, offering him unlimited credit at a renowned establishment. Distrustful, Geralt declines for now. Yet, it's clear their meeting has reignited dangerous magical intrigues. Chapter 6. Geralt and Dandelion visit Loge's Tavern, a lively place where artists, mages, and nobles mingle. Dandelion delights in the atmosphere, reciting poetry and flirting, while Geralt remains alert. Unexpectedly, Coral appears, reigniting the tension. She is dominant, provocative, and makes it clear she is watching him. During the evening, a magical accident occurs. A young sorceress loses control of a spell, causing a ripple in the air that nearly harms several guests. Coral steps in with authority, but Geralt notices the growing imbalance in Karak's magic use. Later, Ferent de Lettenhove enters the tavern and demands a private word with Geralt. In a back alley, he warns that power circles are toying with him. Though Geralt remains defiant, he understands his situation is more complex than it seemed. Chapter 7. Geralt is summoned before the kingdom's Council of Mages, where he is unceremoniously interrogated by powerful figures including Coral, Ortolan, and other influential mages. They try to extract information about his mutations, his ties to Yennefer, and the location of certain alchemical substances. Though the tone remains cordial, every question has hidden motives. Geralt is evasive, sensing he's caught in a much larger power game. Ortolan shows keen interest in the secrets of Kaer Morhen and Witcher creation, hinting they wish to replicate the process. Coral seems more focused on emotional manipulation. After the meeting, Geralt decides to trust none of them. The session ends without overt threats, but with a clear sense that he is being watched, manipulated, and possibly marked for something far more dangerous. As he leaves, another storm looms on the horizon. Chapter 8. Geralt and Dandelion ride toward Ravelin, a fortress located in a crater known as the Elven Stronghold. As they talk about meteorite steel's magical properties, Geralt clarifies that not all Witcher swords have supernatural origins. At Ravelin, they're received by Pyrrol Pratt, a local crime lord who subjects them to a grotesque test. Geralt must fight a Vigilosaur unarmed before a crowd. Cleverly defeating it, he earns the promised information. His swords will be auctioned in Novigrad. Later, a mysterious prince intercepts him with a covert political offer to assassinate the king and his brothers. Geralt refuses, only to learn it was a test orchestrated by the real Prince Egmund. Egmund then hires him to protect King Belohun during his wedding. On the way back, Coral heals his wounds and gives him a new mission: to travel to Risberg Castle, summoned by Ortolan, an influential mage. Interlude 2. Dandelion recounts how, after the events in Ravelin, he took it upon himself to procure a new sword for Geralt, using his wit and the money from cashing a check given by Pyrrol Pratt. At the bank, he meets Etna Asider, a supposed widow who offers him a sword forged in Viralita, appraised by House Giancardi. Dandelion buys it for 100 crowns, convinced he has struck a great deal. When he gives it to Geralt, the Witcher accepts it in silence, though clearly appreciative. Geralt then instructs him to remain in Karak to spy on the royal family, withholding details about Pratt and the auction. Dandelion sarcastically describes the complicated succession line of King Belohun, his 4 legitimate children by different mothers, and the manipulative games between Princes Egmund and Xander. Geralt plans to travel to Novigrad in July to recover his swords before the auction. Dandelion promises to remain silent and watch everything from the shadows. Interlude 3. Panetti writes from Risberg Castle to Litanade, known as Coral, informing her of Geralt's recent arrival. With sarcastic flair, he describes how the Witcher managed to antagonize everyone in under an hour, including the revered Ortolan. While acknowledging Geralt's competence in his trade, Panetti calls him arrogant, mediocre, and unhygienic, even mocking his unkempt fingernails. He thanks Coral for facilitating his involvement in the plan and releases her from any further obligations toward the Witcher. He claims Coral's apparent cordiality was merely a strategy and expresses relief that their relationship is over. Panetti also dismisses rumors linking his behavior to a supposed rivalry with Yennefer, hinting that she is romantically involved with a jeweler and no longer interested in Geralt. He ends by sweetly inviting Coral to visit Risberg. Interlude 4. Coral replies from Karak with an elegant yet firm letter. She thanks Panetti for his concern but clarifies that everything is unfolding on her own terms. She declares herself in full physical and mental health, having regained a peace she didn't know she had lost. Regarding Geralt, she partially disagrees with Panetti's view. While she confirms the Witcher has many flaws, she also acknowledges virtues that some might envy. Coral downplays circulating rumors about her relationship with Geralt and rejects comparisons with past court gossip. She reminds Panetti that there were once rumors about him and Sabrina Glevissig, which were rightly ignored. She concludes by stating she is extremely busy and won't be able to visit Risberg anytime soon. Her tone is courteous but firm, subtly asserting control over her image and personal choices, allowing no one, not even allies, to dictate her actions. Chapter 9. Geralt arrives at Risberg Castle, a center for magical experimentation hidden behind a fair where artifacts and elixirs are traded. After passing a magically guarded gate, he is welcomed by the mages Panetti and Harlan Zara. Though sarcastic and distant, they reveal his presence is needed for a delicate matter. They lead him to the aged Ortolan, a legendary figure obsessed with democratizing magic, though his creations often end in failure. Geralt presents plates taken from slain monsters, one from a Vigilosaur created at Risberg, another from a more ancient being linked to Idarin, a disciple of Alzur. Ortolan erupts in rage, calling it a crime against a work of art. Later, in private, Panetti confesses that an apprentice used Goetia to summon a demon and lost control. 3 massacres followed. They need Geralt to investigate and eliminate the rampaging fiend before it strikes again. Chapter 10. Each day, Geralt is teleported across the Tukaj Hills to patrol vulnerable settlements. Though he hates teleportation, he accepts it as necessary. On his rounds, he speaks with Franz Torquil, a constable also investigating the massacres. Both suspect the culprit is someone from Risberg, possibly a mage possessed by a demon, though the others won't admit it. Torquil warns that if things go wrong, the mages will use Geralt as a scapegoat. As he rides through logging and charcoal-burning colonies, Geralt sees life continuing, despite fresh blood in the air. Panetti shows him the massacre sites Utrees, Arches, and Ragavizna, where victims were mutilated and decapitated. Geralt accuses the sorcerers of allowing such invocations out of greed and ambition. When silence falls again in the forest, Geralt senses the horror may be closer than expected. A new storm approaches. Chapter 11. At Pinetops, a charcoal camp, Geralt finds a horrifying scene. Mutilated corpses, a torn child, and human entrails leading to a hut. Inside, he discovers Sorrel de Gerlund, blood-soaked and tied with intestines. Though hesitant to kill him, Geralt interrogates the mage, who admits to being possessed by a demon. Faking weakness, de Gerlund teleports them to a secret lair, where he imprisons Geralt. De Gerlund reveals his true nature, He murdered dozens of villagers with 2 monstrous hybrids made in Risberg. He used the massacre to fake demonic summoning and rise among the mages, even seducing Ortolan to gain favors. Drugged with white scorpion venom, Geralt becomes paralyzed, but his physiology helps him resist. As Djurlund prepares to extract his eyes for experimentation, Geralt uses the sign of Somni. A violent fight erupts against Pastor and the hybrids boo and bang. Forcing Djurlund to activate a sigil, Geralt escapes via teleportation, emerging wounded but alive beneath the stars. Interlude 5. A group of soldiers led by Shevlov forcibly expands the Kingdom of Redania's territory by uprooting Temerian boundary stones and repositioning border markers. They evict the peasants of Woodend with threats and whippings, demanding double payments for newly annexed lands. Meanwhile, they hand over a mysterious hooded prisoner to an envoy named Fysh, implying her fate will be cruel. The brutality of the territorial takeover reveals systemic corruption and disdain for the settlers. Shevlov is relentless but avoids uncomfortable questions, showing that some topics are better left unexamined. The faceless prisoner struggles as she is moved, raising suspicion. The scene paints a grim picture of political manipulation, military abuse, and violence against civilians. The soldiers press on, determined to move more markers and enforce the new order, indifferent to the suffering they leave behind. Chapter 12. Geralt awakens battered in a swamp after being thrown through a faulty portal triggered by Djurlund. Thanks to the Golden Swallow elixir, he fights the effects of white scorpion venom, though in great pain. Exploring the area, he realizes he's in disputed land between Redania and Temeria, formerly Amblonia. While trying to orient himself, he witnesses Redanian soldiers led by Frigga, Shevlov, and their gang beating and looting peasants. When he intervenes, he is outnumbered and arrested. Bound, he's accused of being a Temerian mercenary. On the way to Findeton, a portal opens, and Djurlund appears with the hybrids Boo, Bang, and Pastor. A massacre ensues, Shevlov and his men are slaughtered. Geralt, using the Igni sign to free himself, escapes on Frigga's mare, fleeing the carnage. He rides away without looking back, burdened by surviving the psychopathic mage once more. Chapter 13. At a remote way station, Geralt meets Dario Bach, a witty and wise dwarf who offers him soup and company. Soon, Frigga and her accomplices burst in, seeking revenge for the recent massacre. Geralt defeats them one by one using only a broom, disarming them and hanging their swords from the ceiling. Things get complicated when Temerian soldiers led by Sergeant Kovacs arrive, searching for the Redanian bandits. Dario improvises, pretending Frigga is his lover and Trent and Ligenza are his servants, saving them from arrest. Once the soldiers leave, the dwarf reveals his disdain for criminals but also his opposition to executions. Geralt decides to head to Novigrad before July 15th, and Dario joins him. As they walk together, they share tales and songs, and the dwarf promises river transport from Wyaturna. With jokes and stories, they begin their journey with renewed hope. Chapter 14. Geralt and Dario arrive in Wyaturna, where they find the prophet Lebiota, a sleek cutter anchored in calm waters. The ship belongs to Kevinard van Vliet, a merchant in gloves accompanied by shady figures, including Javel Fysh and a burly thug named Cobbin. Upon revealing Geralt's identity, the group offers him a deal: protection for their voyage to Novigrad in exchange for passage. Van Vliet mentions the rescue of an elven girl kidnapped by an Aguara, a shape-shifting creature. Though Geralt warns such rescues are impossible, he discovers a girl already locked in the hold. She's not the one sought, but another victim captured for sale. Horrified, Geralt demands her release, but it's too late. She has been murdered by Parlagi, a crew member. Soon after, a storm hits, and the cutter drifts into an eerie swamp. There, a female figure watches from a tree. The Aguara has found them. The hunt has begun. Interlude 6. Nimue, a young sorceress apprentice, travels alone toward Gorsvilen, repeating her route like a spell. Verva, Ford, Sibel, Brugge, Casterfurt, Mortera, Ivalo, Dorian, Anchor, Gorsvilen. At Ivalo, a noisy, foul-smelling industrial town, she sells mushrooms and medicinal roots, pretending to be simple. In a tavern, she hears men debating the discovery of the prophet Lebiota, a ship lost over a century ago, tied to legends and ghostly tales. While some mock the idea, Nimue claims to know the real story. The ship vanished after ignoring a witcher's warning. A drunk threatens her for appearing half-elven and warns her about the magpie woods she must cross. She cleverly avoids revealing her true destination and continues her journey. Deep inside, she reaffirms her mission, to reach the sorceress's school on Nanette Island. Nothing will stop her. Her name is Nimue Virch letter AP Gwyn. Chapter 15. The prophet Lebiota becomes lost in a swampy maze under the influence of illusions conjured by the Aguara, a vengeful magical being. The crew panics amid visions of snakes and whirlpools. Some are real, like a Vadianoi that shatters the rudder. The corpse of the murdered elven girl adds tension, and the sailors try to offer it as a sacrifice. Javel Fsh flees in a boat but is devoured by a crocodile and a giant turtle. The Aguara boards the ship, and Geralt presents her daughter's body, pleading for the crew. She spares them only for Geralt's sake, vowing to seek him again one day. As freedom seems within reach, a final illusion shows a fake shore. The sailors jump and die among leeches. Geralt, Adario, and Van Vliet escape in a boat. Pudlerak stays behind with his ship, determined to meet his fate. As Geralt rows under the storm, he laughs. He's still alive. Interlude 7. At the prestigious auction house of the Borsody brothers, the room fills with nobles and collectors ready to bid on rare items. The charismatic auctioneer, Abner of Navarrete, presents elven books, artworks, and ancient artifacts until a surprising lot emerges. 2 Witcher swords. Tension rises among the bidders until wanted assassin Gerosa Fuerte is arrested mid-auction. Ultimately, Molnar Giancardi offers 4,000 crowns and wins the swords. Days later, Antiadaris collects her commission while Yennefer Muse, greedy for his share, demands it in cash. But when he opens his coin pouch, he discovers his money has been magically turned into excrement. In a humiliating scene, Ravna drags him to a latrine and dunks him in the filth, declaring that shit always ends up where it belongs. Meanwhile, Yennefer, the spell's author, makes sure the swords end up in safe hands. Interlude 8. Yennefer Muse, euphoric after receiving his share of the sale, enters the Osteria Natura Rerum flaunting his supposed fortune. Arrogantly, he orders the most expensive wine and tosses coins on the table, only to watch them turn into excrement. The spell reveals his gold was an illusion. Under the gaze of the owner, Phoebus Ravna, Muse is dragged to the back courtyard and thrown into a latrine without mercy. Submerged in filth, he barely stays afloat among straw, torn books, and organic waste. Ravna repeatedly plunges him into the muck with a pitchfork before leaving him there, stating that filth ends up where it belongs. Humiliated and coated in refuse, Muse is abandoned. The scene stuns onlookers, serving as a public lesson. His greed and arrogance led him to a fate befitting his baseness. What was gold became manure, and he buried in his own pride. Chapter 16. Geralt returns to Karak and visits Coral, who greets him coldly after a failed childbirth. Mosaic, stronger and more composed, confronts him with sarcasm. Coral asks him to return another day, and Geralt realizes a deep rift separates them. He meets Dandelion, who tries to console him and suggests accepting the role of royal bodyguard for the wedding. The Witcher admits he failed to recover his swords. The auction ended before his arrival, and no one would give him information. Then, the mage Panetti appears, returns Roach to Geralt, and gifts him a Viralita-forged sword inherited from his father. They discuss Die Gerlund, now imprisoned in the citadel under magical protection. Disillusioned by Risberg's hypocrisy, Panetti leaves the Brotherhood for good. Geralt accepts the sword and departs without saying goodbye to Coral. When Dandelion asks about her, he simply replies she'll be busy, saying goodbye to someone. Interlude 9. The Risberg facility team sends a confidential letter to Grandmaster Narses to cover up the atrocities committed by the mage Die Gerlund. They justify his genetic experiments with eugenic goals and claim the deaths on the Temerian border, about 40 people, were the result of a psychotic break. They assert the mage is undergoing treatment and continue to protect his research. The report suggests silencing investigator Torquil and, if necessary, the Witcher Geralt, who might uncover the truth. Chapter 17. Geralt reaches Franz Torquil, wounded after an ogre-troll attack. An incompetent doctor wants to amputate his leg, but the Witcher saves him with elixirs and the help of an elderly herbalist. He then seeks Otto Dussert, a werewolf he once saved, to track a secret path to the Citadel. Together they explore caves infested with bats, trolls, and other creatures until they find an entrance marked by the scent of a domestic cat. Geralt proceeds alone and discovers a hidden lab filled with horrors. Mutilated bodies, imprisoned children, and human remains used in experiments. He kills the ogre trolls Boo and Bang and, with Dussert's help, defeats Pastor, the third creature. Finally, he snaps Djurlund's neck, ending the mage's reign of terror. Djurlund's cat watches, and Geralt justifies his action. It had to be done. Chapter 18. King Belahun's wedding begins with summer pomp and uneasy calm. Geralt, in a new doublet, arrives with Dandelion, who had been snubbed as a guest artist. Prince Egmund tasks Geralt with his protection while political tensions simmer beneath the festivities. Coral reveals the king's fiancée, Ildiko Brekel, was expelled from Aretuza, and that the infamous ship Akarantia has docked. Soon after, a medallion gifted by Ildiko activates magically and strangles the king. Chaos erupts, and the exiled Prince Varaxes seizes the throne with Akarantia's mercenaries. In secret, Egmund had ordered his father's murder and intended to frame Geralt, but the Witcher foils the plot. Ferrant, the instigator, warns Geralt to vanish. Amid official mourning, Varaxes announces his coronation and immediate wedding to Ildiko, consolidating his coup. Chapter 19. From a terrace, Geralt, Coral, Mosaic, and Dandelion watch rats fleeing uphill and sense a storm building under a clear sky. Suddenly, monstrous winds erupt and a massive tidal wave strikes Karak. Ships splinter, the port is destroyed, and coastal districts vanish beneath walls of water. Geralt, Mosaic, and the formidable Commander Violetta rush to rescue children amid the chaos. Antiadaris also helps but dies crushed by palisade posts. Exhausted and injured, Geralt is pulled from the water. Coral reappears, only to say goodbye, wounded in pride. Ravna calls for rebuilding amid corpses and wreckage. A bell stubbornly continues to ring above the ruins. When Geralt searches for his sword, he discovers it was stolen during the disaster. Disillusioned with Karak and what it stands for, he decides to leave, far and fast. Interlude 10. In a villa untouched by the tidal wave, Yennefer and Coral, Litanade, sit peacefully in a courtyard, sipping wine and discussing Karak's changes under King Varaxes. Coral reveals she must sell her villa and go into exile due to royal decrees banning unlicensed magic and expelling non-humans and sorcerers from property ownership. With irony, she jokes about rumors following the regime's fall and pretends to be pregnant with Geralt's child, momentarily surprising Yennefer, before admitting it was a jest. Coral reveals her disciple Mosaic fled with Geralt for a brief romance, but he left her after one night, leaving flowers and a note that convinced her to return. Upon seeing the young woman's face, Yennefer smiles faintly, silently recognizing a familiar gesture. The interlude ends with both sorceresses reflecting on how even fleeting connections with Geralt leave lasting marks. Chapter 20. Geralt departs at dawn with Dandelion, leaving Mosaic behind. Along the road, they stop at an inn that seems ordinary, until Brihen, a witcher from the cat school, appears and threatens to kill a priestess unless Geralt fights. Geralt refuses, but everything changes when a young woman named Tiziana Fravi delivers his stolen swords, sent by Yennefer. Upon receiving them, Geralt warns Brihen that if he spills blood, he'll die instantly. Brihen withdraws and leaves the inn. Tiziana reveals Yennefer sent her and that she's training as a Dwimviandra. Dandelion mentions rumors about King Foltest's bounty for breaking his daughter's curse, but Geralt says he won't get involved in politics. That night, He receives a court summons from Risberg accusing him of fraud. Geralt ignores it and spends the night with Tiziana, grateful for her company and the return of his swords. Epilogue. Long after the events, Nimue, a young woman on her way to Aretuza's school of sorcery, walks through a dark forest and is attacked by a monstrous creature. A white-haired man wielding 2 swords saves her and walks with her afterward. As they speak, Nimue suspects he is the legendary Geralt of Rivia, but the man denies it, claiming Geralt died over a century ago. Yet, his words reveal deeper knowledge. They talk of the persistence of evil, the eternal need for witchers, and how darkness endures despite the world's progress. He leaves her with a white rose and a kind gesture. Nimue wakes up believing it was a dream. A woman in a cart picks her up, and she continues her journey, unsure of what happened, but feeling that stories like Geralt's never truly end. This brings us to the end of Season of Storms, a story where Geralt faces chaos, manipulation, and loss without his swords or the protection of law. Thank you for joining this literary journey. If you found the summary helpful, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share it with someone interested in the Witcher universe. Now tell us in the comments, did you enjoy this prequel more than the early Witcher stories? Which book should we cover next?